Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Meredith Williams from the Capacity Collective. In this video, we show you how to use the Best Start for Kids Culturally Responsive Measurement Tool, Protective Factors, or the CRMT-PF. We will call it the CRMT for short. It was created by the Capacity Collective and the King County Best Starts for Kids initiative, and it was tested and validated in diverse communities across King County, Washington. In the next few minutes, we will discuss how to administer the CRMT-PF and how to use the CRMT-PF in sections. The most important thing to think about when it comes to administering the CRMT is that you will need to have a plan. Hopefully your program has already made these decisions, but we will talk about each of them to help you understand the full plan so you can successfully use the tool with families. The CRMT has 5 sections: family resilience, knowledge of parenting and child development, social supports, concrete supports, and parent or caregiver and program staff relationship. Your program may be using all of the sections or some of them based on how they plan to use the data. If you aren't sure, check with your supervisor. How you use the sections also depends on how often you will be administering the survey. If you are going to give the CRMT just one time, you will be using up to all 5 sections depending on when you give it. If you give it at the beginning of services, you will only use up to the first 4 sections and omit the section on the relationship with program staff, since there will not be a relationship between the family and program to measure at that point. If you give it at the end of services, you will use up to all 5 sections. We only suggest including the section on the caregiver-practitioner relationship if the family has received at least 12 hours of service. If you are going to give the CRMT multiple times, you will use up to 4 sections the first time you administer the tool, but up to 5 sections when you give it the next time. If you are also giving the survey at regular intervals during the family's time in the program, as long as they have had 12 hours of service, you will include the 5th section after the first survey is administered. We recommend this approach of administering the tool every 6 months or year, depending on the length of your program. Collecting the data at regular intervals is helpful for understanding which families finish your program and which do not. Again, your program should have a clear plan in place for which sections you will be including before you begin administering the survey to families. When administering the CRMT, you will also want to have a script that as a program you have agreed upon so that you are using it consistently across program families. There are 2 important parts of this script: how you get informed consent from the families and how you frame the tool itself. Before families participate in the survey, they should understand the purpose of the survey. They should know whether the survey is required and how they can choose to engage or not engage. They should know what kinds of questions will be used on the survey so that they can opt in or out, and how the data will be stored and used, who will have access to it, how it will be shared. Second, be sure to take the time to read the framing out loud and watch for body language to see that the person taking the survey understands. Give them an opportunity to ask questions before you continue. In testing the instrument, we found that the framing at the beginning of the survey and the framing before the concrete support section to both be crucial to the survey working well with families. Now, let's talk adaptations. When using the CRMT, it is important to keep in mind that the tool is only helpful for your program if it is administered as consistently as possible across all of your families and as closely as possible to how the tool was developed and tested. You can make adaptations, as we will discuss in a moment, but be sure all adaptations are made in balance with keeping the validity of the tool in mind. As we know, families are not all alike. A one-size approach for all is not a best practice for working with diverse families. So we want to share some options that can make the tool a better fit for the families you're working with, while retaining the power of the CRMT to be a measurement tool. As we mentioned before, the CRMT is modular, so your program may choose to omit entire sections if they don't feel it is applicable to the families and communities you serve. Some of the language in the CRMT's questions may not be relevant to the families you're working with, and you should be prepared to make small shifts in word choices to accommodate families. For example, if you're working with a kinship care family, you may want to change references from your child to children in your care. However, be careful when doing any further rephrasing beyond these small word choices. The more the survey is changed, the less accurate it will be in actually measuring protective factors. The same holds true for translations. The CRMT has already been translated into several languages and tested in these languages. Whenever possible, use a version of the CRMT that is in the first language of the family you are surveying. If the CRMT is not available in that family's primary language, be careful not to translate on the fly as you are administering the survey. These kinds of in-the-moment translations mean that the questions or response options may be interpreted differently than they were written. If a family is confused on what a question is asking, it is best to prompt them to respond as they are interpreting the question. When you administer the CRMT, you will want to consider the impact on the family. For example, with the fifth section, if you are working closely with that family, they may feel pressure to answer those questions in a certain way as to not harm the relationship with you, or from fear of jeopardizing services. You may want to consider having another person administer the tool to get more accurate data, or you may want to change the method of administration for just that fifth section. For example, you could hand the paper or a tablet to the family to fill out on their own, rather than reading those questions aloud. You should also consider the emotional impact on the family. The CRMT does ask about some potentially heavy topics, such as loneliness and isolation, support, struggles with money, and more. This may especially be the case when you ask about social supports and concrete supports. Even if your organization does not have the resources in-house to offer solutions to every concern that comes up during the survey, be prepared to offer emotional support and resource referrals at the end of the survey. This also applies to considering with whom to actually administer the CRMT. We recommend administering the CRMT to one caregiver at a time, both for ease of demographic tracking and because some of the topics may be sensitive for families to discuss together. You can learn more about the culturally responsive measurement tool, Protective Factors, by following the link in the QR code or in the intro to this video. The links take you to the Best Starts for Kids blog, where you can find the most up-to-date information about the tool and the resources available to support using the tool. Thank you for the work you do in the community to help families thrive.